Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's me, the guy that started the new TSR. It's true. I had a license from it from the owners, right? And Ernie offered it to me, as did the owners at the time. And I rebooted it, and it sort of became this kind of magnet for white nationalists, Trumpsies, the new Fourth Reich Nazis, Trump supporters.
You serious?
I love this place!
Well, that was Steve Deinhardt, publisher of the Giant Lands RPG. That's right, I actually own this game. And he just went on the bender of all benders on X, screaming about decolonization and wanting white people bred out of existence. What the heck? And while that sounds, of course, all insane, it might be the most honest thing that we've seen from the RPG industry in quite a while. Because quite frankly, he is not alone. There's a checkered history behind the Giant Lands game that involves the rebooting of the old TSR name, Tactical Studies Research, I believe, which Wizards of the Coast let lapse at a certain point. And there's been a couple of owners since then. Now, contrary to Steve Deinhardt's inference that he got the name free and clear, it's actually a bit murkier. I think it was plucked by an individual who also apparently let it lapse after a while. And then someone named Justin Lanassa picked it up and brought Ernie Gygax, that's Gary Gygax's son, on board. And they had plans to reboot in a small way the old TSR. Giant Lands, I believe, was one of the products they had planned, as was a new iteration of Star Frontiers. Now, there was some material leaked from that Star Frontiers game that was deemed to be racist. I think it had to do with racial stat modifiers. And a ton of heat and visibility fell on the new company, and it was more or less doomed after that. The upshot was that Wizards of the Coast sued new TSR. Ernie Gygax wanted out, feeling that he had been kind of used and betrayed, and eventually even Justin Lanassa gave up the ghost. So Giant Lands, written by Jim Ward, ended up in the hands of Steve Deinhardt and his Wonderfilled imprint. That's the guy you saw at the beginning of this video. It was released to little fanfare, but folks like me who were interested in something produced by Jim Ward and Ernie Gygax got the game, paged through it, and then it pretty much sat on our shelves. The game is okay from what I can tell. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. It sort of fell down the memory hole for most gamers, partly because Steve Deinhardt and Wonderfilled didn't really support it, and they didn't do a good job promoting it either. And this game also seems to be the RPG world's equivalent of Chris Chan's Sonichu medallion. Since its publication, Jim Ward has passed away, Ernie Gygax has passed away, Steve Deinhardt's sanity passed away. In late June, he began a series of bizarre posts on X to screech about representation in RPG game art, then pivoting to decolonizing RPGs, and finally going full Democratic Party in 2025 and whining about the Trumpsies being the bogeyman of every ill in the world. He claimed that we were suckers for supporting Ernie and Jim Ward by being the only ones to buy the game, but also saying how we destroyed his business because, well, we were the only ones to buy the game. The rant became utterly pathological when he said that he wanted white people bred out of existence. Yes, you read that correctly. White people bred out of existence. This is really, really sad, bizarre stuff. And in something that was all too predictable, he flamed out completely by getting rid of the Wonderfilled X account, claiming that 90% of the people on X were fake on the way out. You really do have to wonder if he is in a good place mentally. I know he said some pretty horrible things, but honestly, I wouldn't want to see him do any harm to himself, so I actually do hope Steve Deinhardt gets a little bit of help. And as entertaining as all this was, I do have to give Steve Deinhardt points for being honest. He's only saying out loud the vile things that places like Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, and Green Ronin believe in their heart. The big game companies demonstrate with every release how much they agree with things like decolonization. And by the way, that term is very specific. It means the elimination of white men in RPGs, period. as characters in those games and as players out of the game. Not white women. They're next on the chopping block, but they're safe for now. We've heard about this in fits and starts. The most famous was from previous executive producer of D&D, Kyle Brink.
And I think there's been mistakes made in years past where people assumed that D&D players were all, white dudes in a basement, which has been a faulty assumption for a lot of years and gets more and more false every day. And so it's, in my viewpoint, honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough.
But there's also Paizo employees talking about the same kind of decolonization. There's former Wizards of the Coast staff who whine about white guys. There's current Wizards of the Coast staff who also declare that they aren't so keen on whitey. I'm sure Green Ronin and its Antifa founder surely embrace the hatred of whites by allowing their employees to say stuff like this. Steve Deinhardt's rantings and ravings are just the raw form of the deepest wishes of the big RPG companies. You can see it in their art choices. The D&D 2024 Player's Handbook purposely de-emphasized white men. Hell, Wizards of the Coast even gave explicit directions to their artists to decolonize their art in 5e. That was 10 years ago.
When we got the descriptions, they were very adamant. They were like, try not to make it like a white blonde guy. Like, please, like, we love them, but there's like 500 million of them.
Take a look at even Darrington Press's Daggerheart's art choices. Of their iconic characters, for each of the 18 core classes, exactly one is a white dude. That does not happen by accident. That is a choice, which is, of course, their right. It's a little odd, seeing as white men are still by far the biggest part of their RPG audience. Flip through any modern RPG book from a big company, and you'll not be able to deny what's going on. They are kind of trying to erase white men from the game, and at this point, if you deny it, you're either blind or you're just a fool. So, in our haste to rightfully stand against the blatant racism of Wonderfilled.games and its founder, Steve Deinhardt, you also need to understand he's just the one that's taking the heat for what most, I repeat, most of the mainstream RPG industry agrees with. He said the quiet part out loud. But don't delude yourself. Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, and Green Ronin want most of you gone. That's not hyperbole. That is just paying attention to what they're saying and what they're doing. There are better games out there from people who don't hate you. Greg Gillespie's Dragon Slayer RPG for a full D&D retro clone experience. Troll Lord Games, Castles and Crusades for an old D&D feel with some updated mechanics. Jeff Tolinian's Hyperborea for pulp awesomeness. And Shadow Dark from Arcane Library for people who want a stripped-down version of 5e that doesn't pander to the least common denominator. Think twice before you give a dime to the big companies that literally want you erased from existence. That's all for today. I'm sure you guys will let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Remember to tune in every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our live stream, The Lair, where me and a couple of buddies talk about RPG news of the day and other things. It's always a great time, and we have the best chat on YouTube. All right, you guys take care and have a great, great rest of your day. We will talk very soon. Peace.